When I was 6 years old, we were living in St. Pete on the beach, Treasure Island. Along the shore there was an Australian pine tree in the water. So I ran inside. I got my father's fishing pole, and I told my mom there's some fish out there striking, and she gave me a hot dog to put on the line. Fish were striking, and I waited and I threw, and I caught a snook on a hot dog. I always liked fishing. There was people that made statements to me, do you think you can make a living fishing inshore? And I said, well, I would sure like to try. Well, I just renewed my license at 45 years.
I think when people think about Florida, they think about fishing, something that we have 4 million people who come to fish to Florida, and Florida is considered the center of recreational fishing in the world.
We have tens of thousands of people with boats in our two counties. And Sarasota Bay is a central part of what people like to do to recreate on weekends. And a healthy bay is important to our economy. I kind of got interested in doing this by watching Jacques Cousteau's specials in the carpet of my grandparents' house in Pennsylvania. I didn't come from a family of marine biologists, and no one lived in Florida. No one even went to college, but I just found it to be a fascinating field, and it's a really great, interesting career path.
So my research focuses on movement ecology and reproductive resilience. So this is understanding the productivity of populations so that we can better understand what level of fishing they can sustain. We do a lot of acoustic tracking of marine fish, and what that is you have an acoustic tag. They give off an acoustic signal. We have receivers that are deployed that pick up that signal when a fish swims within range. So we can tell based on our underwater recordings the level of aggregation sound at that site, so we can look at spawning seasonality. We go out in the field a lot, but we're never going to spend as many days in the field as fishermen do. So when we set up a research project, we often collaborate with fishermen.
Fish are changing. They really are changing their habitats. They all depend on that estuarine, the seagrass. You have to have the environment to have the crabs, to have the shrimp. It's all about the groceries. And you can't displace fish. You can't say to a fish, okay, we'll do a development here and they used to spawn, and say, well, you're gonna have to spawn over here. It doesn't work that way. Those fish are used to spawning there. Once you displace them, you have problems.
The clearer the water is, the deeper seagrass beds can grow. And seagrass are kind of like a canary in a coal mine. It's telling us that things aren't going very well in the state of Florida right now. Over the last decade, we've lost about 180 square miles of seagrass meadows across the state. It's really kind of like a perfect storm of more people, more wastewater, more stormwater, and our infrastructure just wasn't up to the task.
In 2016, a sinkhole at the New Well Stack caused more than 200 million gallons of contaminated water.
340,000 gallons of raw sewage.
Massive piles of hazardous waste
to spill into the Floridian aquifer.
Now, attention will be placed on the bay.
The concern obviously is algae blooms, which could rob oxygen out of the water once the algae dies.
An area already struggling with red tide.
On a small scale, red tide actually is part of the system. It is beneficial. Where it came into play is you and I and the unnatural nutrients, and with all of what goes into the water. And we create an algae bloom, which the red tide feeds off of. We're fishing this pass area, and we were talking about the Lingbia earlier. If you look back here, you'll see it. It breaks off, and where it affects my fishing, there's no way I could fish here physically. You throw it in there, and it gets tangled, and you can't fish. So that's one reason why, with this algae blooms that we have, are affecting our fishing. That's it, right there. Very dense. Nutrients, sunlight, and it grows. You know, educating people that you're gonna have to pay a little bit to keep your water clean.
It's a bit of a catch-22 when you get a red tide in Tampa Bay. It's not pleasant, it's not desirable, but it does bring red tide to the attention of maybe people that normally wouldn't experience it because they're not on the water to see it themselves. Not only does it impact the fish, it impacts the fishing industry, it impacts the tourism industry, and this is what we love about our state, is that natural connection that people have to the water.
I'm very concerned that most people, your average American, is not very tied to the natural system. And I think about how this disconnect, I think, has allowed us to have very detrimental effects on our natural resources without your average person being aware of it. I am 100% sure that we put our mind to finding a way to put the health of our Earth first and engage the world community in that we can.
This community is already investing a lot of money. Our local governments around here have committed to spending almost $1 billion, about $900 million over the next 5 to 10 years to deal with wastewater and stormwater issues and habitat restoration and water quality, because they realize how important it is. This bay is worth more than $1 billion.
So we like to bring people out here to let them know this is what the water quality can be like in parts of Sarasota Bay if we do more of the right thing, maintaining our water quality, getting a kind of resilient shoreline. You got beautiful water clarity. We've got grass beds that are growing deep enough that manatees can actually feed on them and not be exposed to the air. Yeah, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to make as much of the bay look like this as possible.
Being able to educate people in how to manage it, especially our fisheries, and realize that this is what we have. You can't just take, you gotta give to preserve what we have.